Hello everyone, this is Ting Tan. Today my presentation topic is Avalanches during flexure of early age steel fiber reinforced concrete beams. And this work is done by students John Liu, Robert, and a collaborative work between Fan Du, Courtney, Manda, Driver, and Ting from both Vermont Technical College and the University of Vermont. Okay, so right now the question is, what is the avalanche? Avalanche is a sudden change of the magnitude in a very short amount of time. For example, we have earthquake once while, and if we collect the magnitude of an earthquake and number of earthquakes happen, then we will find a correlation between them. So the interesting question here is, when we load a fiber reinforced concrete, for example, like steel fiber reinforced concrete, we know that the steel fiber helped to increase the ductility of the composite, but the huge amount of variations linked to this loading process is this also similar to the avalanche mechanism. So this is an interesting and important question because when we load the fiber reinforced concrete structures, if we are able to quantify or at least measure how this evolved damage go over with time, then it will be helpful for us to measure the long-term durability of transportation infrastructures. So then we resort to a mean field theory proposed by Professor Karen Darman and James Senna. Basically, it means the avalanche velocity here is related to how much remote stress you applied, what's the interaction between different parts, and also the loading history. The failure stress is related to the local defects, so that means it may cause a smaller change from different parts. The variable definitions can be found in our recent paper.
So then what we do here is we design experiments. So it's like this is a steel fiber reinforced beam, 0.5% or 1% fiber volume ratio. And then we couple this with a fast loading cell, fast rate sampling load cell. Okay, so basically we collected 100,000 points per second. Because when we put the four-point bending in the concrete beams, it increases the load, stress increase first, and then it drops with many stress variations. So many stress variations. So if we isolate this stress variation individually, so this is like a zoom up view for one of them, then you can see, okay, you have a start point and ending point. So because we have 100,000 points. So then that means we can isolate these individual avalanches very detailedly. So we can get their magnitudes, and their duration, and their rates.
So if we look at the results like this, initially we have a relatively large avalanche, but as time goes by, the magnitudes of the avalanche size remain constant. So avalanche size here means the difference between the starting and ending points of the avalanche. And if we overlap the results from different groups, and we also found this, you have a large avalanche in the beginning and relatively stable avalanches after that. So if we count the number of avalanches for different groups like this, then you will find that for groups with 1% fiber, like here, they have relatively larger amount of avalanches than the 0.5% fiber group. This is probably because when we have more fibers, they have more chances to trigger avalanche of different places. And this cumulative, complementary cumulative distribution function means this is a probability constant. Okay, this is the avalanche size. So that means when you go beyond a certain amount of size, then you have this much, this many of avalanches in the percentage. Okay. So if we do a statistic analysis for these avalanche numbers for different groups, now you will see that when they overlap, they have a scaling region, okay, for different groups, and after that, they have this different scattering. And if we also do this statistic distribution for the avalanche duration, and you will find that they sort of separate into two groups, and these two are related to the 3.81 millimeter per minute, and these two related to the 0.76 millimeter per minute loading rate. So that means when you have a smaller loading rate, it might take longer time for the avalanche to fully develop.
So then what we do here is if we put together the avalanche size with the duration, and it means this all each individual start is one avalanche. Okay, you will see that okay, there's a scaling region here, and this blue line is the main line. Okay, which agree with the prediction from the main field theory pretty well. And interesting here, if you see like the highest part here, there are like small, three avalanches. These three avalanches happened at the fracture of the bottom concrete during bending. So that means they have much larger size and duration than the rest of the avalanches. So similar things here, if you put the size and with the rate of the avalanche, and you also see that, okay, the avalanches happen at the fracture of the bottom concrete show much larger size and much larger stress drop rate. So this is consistent with, for results at different groups. So then furthermore here we take a closer study for the avalanche dynamics, basically like how the rate of the stress drop evolve for the avalanches in the scaling region, in the red segment. So you will see that the left side are the measurements with scale bars and the arrow bars, and the right side are the predictions from mean field theory. So basically for different cases, there's a nice agreement between the model predictions and also the avalanches measured. So what's more here is if we subtract the prediction with and without weakening, then we find that when the weakening levels become smaller and smaller, basically like these blue lines, then the results between the weakening prediction and non-weakening prediction diminish. So that means, okay, they're almost the same, close to the parabolic shape. And if you get like a much larger weakening behavior, then the results become deviated from the parabolic situation. So also similarly, consistent results were applying for different groups. So then what we do here is we overlap the small the avalanches in the scaling region for all of them, and using a compared prediction and the prediction from the model and the measurement results. So generally the predictions and the results agree with each other pretty well for different cases. So one more thing we do here is we isolate some of the avalanches with similar size here. Then you can see that, okay, so so if they have similar size, when you collapse within each other, the trending line predicted model also capture the general trends of the measurement data. And what's more interesting here is if you pi up like the real measurement from time to the stress drop rate, you can see that as the time increases, the stress rate also moves outwards, becomes larger. That's consistent with the results we find before in a previous plot and co-plot between the avalanche duration and avalanche drop rate. And also here is if we get the similar size here, this is like similar duration, it's a similar size, and as the size become larger, this line also moves outwards. This is also consistent with the prior results.
So what is the underlying mechanism for these different avalanches? Okay, so what we do here is first we check the microstructure of the fracture sample, and you can see that, okay, you have holes, empty holes, and you have these pull out fibers. So these SEM images give us microstructure clues of the fiber pull out. Even we know that, to correlate specific avalanche type to crack events is not very easy, because you have different type of cracks, interfacial cracks into the matrix, and also the pull out. But what we can see here is if we see the different type of avalanches, like this one, this is small avalanche, okay. So you have a relatively small magnitude, and they have this parabolic shape of the rate. So this is consistent with the mean field theory we present in previous slides. But other times you will see that, okay, we have a stress, incubation period. So it takes a while before the stress drops suddenly. So you have a rate increase accordingly. So that means this kind of fiber pull out needs an incubation period. But if you see the avalanche happen at the crack of the bottom concrete, you will see that there's a huge drop of stress in the beginning, but then it gradually slowed. This is because this kind of crack is very violent, so the rate is large in the beginning, but then after that, it takes a long time for the statistically distributed fibers inside the matrix to entangle the crack and stop them eventually. So if you see the fraction of the small avalanches at different stages of the experiment, you will see that that's relatively constant distribution.
Conclusions here. So an experiment system was created to measure the fiber reinforced concrete avalanches. We should mention here, okay, an acoustic mission can be another method to study the avalanches, but both this high stress time method or acoustic mission method has not been reported before to study the avalanche of fiber reinforced concrete materials. And second one, the mean field theory prediction agree well with the measurement for the avalanches in fiber reinforced concrete. And we found different types of avalanche during the fracture behavior. So one possible application for this method is that we might have a chance, a new avenue to measure the durability of a toughened concrete materials and structures at different complicated conditions. So acknowledgements. I want to thank the funding from the research from the Transportation Infrastructure Durability Center from University of Maine and the grant number, okay, and also the University Department of Transportation Center programs. And thank you very much. And questions.